robotics programs over the last 7. I actually work with Candie over at the Navy's outreach program.
Very cool. Wow, so you guys have a lot of experience doing this stuff, a lot of experience with FIRST, and I've seen a lot of you are also, have experience on teams. Do you think that's typical for judges and judge advisors, Candie, or is that kind of unique to your group?
No, I don't think so. There's a lot of folks who, and sometimes it actually makes it difficult because people do have team affiliations.
Right.
But a lot of volunteers within the whole FIRST program are there because they know a team, they know somebody who has a team. Um, and so I would say probably for the events that I'm the judge advisor for, it's probably a 50-50 split of folks who are from teams and are or were part of teams, and their kids have grown out of it, so now they've come back to judge, or they're actually affiliated with teams.
Okay, very cool. All right, well, with that all said, just a couple of things. If you have questions for these folks, you can send them into the chat at any time, and we will get to them. Just type *Q followed by your question in chat. We're going to pull it in, and if we like the question, which we probably will, you guys have been asking some good questions the last 2 days, we'll pose it to the crew here and have them answer it live on air. But before we get everything rolling, I just want to say one last thing. I want to thank the folks that helped make this possible here, and that is WPI. WPI, or Worcester Polytechnic Institute, is a leader in project-based education and was the first university to offer not only a bachelor's of science, but also a master's and a PhD in robotics engineering. If you want to learn more about becoming a student at WPI or sponsoring one of the projects WPI hosts for their students, you can visit wpi.edu to learn more. All right, well, with that all said, Candie, I invite you to sort of start off the discussion. I want to know, what do you want to talk about with all the folks watching first?
Oh, we're going to talk a lot today about our perspective of the judging process. You guys are all smart students and mentors. You can read the award descriptions, and you're going to hear it multiple times today, probably from all of us. The award descriptions are out there. Read them, be familiar with them, know what the guidelines are. We don't have to tell you that, but what I am going to do is share a little bit about the process so that you're better prepared to talk to the blue shirts when they come to talk to your team, and to answer questions, because a lot of times, when you're in a competition, it's hard to ask the judge a question about, hey, how does this work? So a little bit about the process. Senior judge advisors, there's a few of us across, each district has one, and there's a few for the regionals. We are required to attend training every year with FIRST leadership and bring that information back to the judge advisor for all the events in our district. Every judge advisor has to go to in-person training every 3 years. It's amazing how much information they discuss in, that day or two that you're with the senior judge advisors for FIRST, and leadership from FIRST headquarters. And there's a lot of debate back and forth how to interpret things, how to handle certain situations. And so that's a lot of what we do. We facilitate more than anything else. I haven't actually judged in a while, so we facilitate. Judge advisors for each event. Every event has one. They work with the volunteer coordinator and their committee to recruit and assign judges for their events. We always like to make sure we have judges who are well versed in all things robot and all things team. And sometimes it's hard to get a balance. Judges, like everybody else, have preferences as to what they like and what they have interest in. And you can't very well have a whole crew of judges who knows absolutely nothing about building a robot or how it works or what machine attributes are. And vice versa. You can't have people who have zero background in technical things. So you have to have a balance. And sometimes that's a tough thing for us to do, but we work hard at making sure our events have got a good group of judges to go forward. We will assign judges specifically to interview chairmans and dean's list. And those judges have a few more requirements. They have to have a little bit more experience, and they have to go to separate trainings about chairmans and dean's list every year. We have match observers as well. Match observers are the folks, they are looking at what's going on the field. And then the rest of our judges, we have a game plan for how we're going to interview every team. And that can change from event to event. I prefer to set my judges up. I have pairs of judges that go out, that there'll be a pair of judges that will go and talk to a team about their robot and machine attribute awards, and another pair of judges that will go and talk to them about the team attribute awards. So, but in some places in the country, they send out a trio of judges that talk to a team about all the awards. It's a matter of preference for the judge advisor, and sometimes it's dependent on the pool of judges that they have to work with. Now,
hey, Candie, can I to
Yep.
just sort of ask you a question on that? So,
Sure.
for everybody else's background, I am a judge advisor for Lego League in Massachusetts, a much different game than what you all do. But what do you see as the reason that you decided to do two sets of pairs as opposed to one big trio of judges?
I've actually tried both. My judges don't like the crew judges that I work with, and I have folks that I've worked with. A lot of them are Navy folks, who have come to whatever event I'm the JA for every year. Um, they like being able to talk to they think they're not comfortable with talking about everything. It's
Uh,
kind of a hard thing to do because there's so many awards that you're talking about at one time. And so and if you don't have the right people in the pit or what, it becomes hard to, all of a sudden you're talking about machine and then you switch to, imagery or team spirit, and sometimes it throws the kids off.
right.
But it's a matter of preference. Um, and actually, Francis Sean also is a JA for FLL, just so you know
Oh, yes, very cool.
that.
Hey,
There you
just
go. So, one of the things that people I don't think understand, now, like for a 40 team event, which is what most of our New England district team events are, each pair of judges is assigned to talk to 10 to 15 teams, depending on how many judges we have. So that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. I mean, judges acknowledge, and we know that teams are working on robots, have to be on cue, have matches, have, all these things that can distract them from, standing around waiting for a bunch of blue shirts to come talk to them. So one of the first things I can suggest to teams is you guys need to make a plan about how you're going to make yourself available when blue shirts arrive. If it's not a good time, that's okay, but say so. And
yeah.
do it graciously, because we've seen that not happen. And help find a time that they can come back to talk to you. Also, make sure, if a lot of teams have like one person who's designated to talk to the judges. Don't be dependent on one student. People get sick. People can't make it. There are issues. Or wait, usually it's not like a person on the drive team, but make sure you've got somebody who's available. Have a plan, have a backup plan. Um, so, because what a lot of people I don't think understand is, people talk to the judges, and the judges interview when they're done interviewing their teams, they head back up to the judge room, and we have a whole bunch of big posters on the wall for each award. And they talk amongst themselves, and they put up numbers for teams that they think might be a good candidate for a certain award. I like to send another set of judges out to talk to all those teams so that we really have good information when it comes time to deliberate.
And
And
Candie,
if you,
oh,
yes,
Candie, I was gonna say that second set of judges you send out, does that end up being on the same day, or is that like the next day between, or like say if it's a district on a Sunday?
no, actually, we try to do it on the same day.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I mean, that's if everybody's able to see their teams, and we're not trying to make sure that everybody,
Yeah.
in an ideal world, it's done on the same day.
Cool.
If not, it happens on Sunday morning. Um, so, we when the judges have to they need information. And the only way they're going to get that information is if you talk to them. They're not going to walk into your pit and see something. And most of them are technically astute enough to recognize, oh my God, that's the coolest manipulator I've ever seen in my life, and put you up on the board. But when you read the award descriptions, students have to be able to convey the design, the development, the concept of something. And if the judges don't have that, when they get back up to the judge room and they're advocating for you, and all the judges vote to say, okay, yes, this team deserves an award. Um, and the other thing too, don't market yourself. I've seen, unfortunately, my personal opinion, I've seen way too many teams are too strong into marketing. They're selling, oh, we can do this, 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 and this. Well, you know what? That's great. But there are match observers who are out there watching. And if you claim you're shooting 100 balls every time, and the match observers come back and say, they never shot once, um, the judges are going to know.
Yeah.
We would rather have you be honest. Talk about what you have and haven't accomplished, what your problems were. Those are the things that the judges want to know. Make sure your technical folks can talk about how things were built or programmed. Make sure your team knows what you're doing for outreach. Um, you know, there's somebody who's got his head in the robot and programming or whatever, and they're talking to you about how many FLL teams you guys have started. Oh, we do FLL? You know, yeah, it sounds funny, but it's happened.
Oh boy.
Because especially with bigger teams, because bigger teams, and you have different subsystems and different groups are working on different things. Make sure that everybody knows, hey guys, this is what we need to make sure we highlight. Read the award descriptions. I'm going to say it. It'll be 100 times. I've heard teams complain because they didn't win an award they expected to win, but because they're missing some of the things they're supposed to hit with those guidelines. And judges shared. Yep.
Just to break in on that really quick. So I think people, it's very easy in my opinion. So I've been on a first team for a very long time. To me, it's easy to sort of aim at the chairman's award because there's a document and all that fun stuff you've got, and sort of aiming at the EI award and some other or the entrepreneurship award. But I think there's a lot of people who kind of think that when it comes to the broad spectrum of technical awards, that it's just kind of like show what you've got and then let the chips fall where they may, But right. You're talking about reading the description and focusing on that. So is it? I guess the question is it possible that if your team really wanted to win the Innovation and Controls Award, that you could like focus in on that and like actually present yourself in a way that improves your chances of winning that?
Chris is going to talk about the Machine Attribute Award.
Okay, great, cool.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, I think that there's something to be said for that.
All right, I look forward to hearing what Chris has to say.
Yeah. And the other thing too, people also tend to forget that we have to share the wealth. That's one team is not going to win every award except for safety, because safety's first. The balancing act and the deliberations in the judge room is not an easy thing. It's often, sometimes can be considered herding cats. One team can be up for 5 different awards. And so it becomes, you got to balance. Well, maybe they were better off for quality, but there's only 2 teams up for innovation and control, and there's 5 teams for quality.
Yeah.
And so we have to balance all those things, so that we're making sure, that we are spreading the wealth.
Right.
And remember, the judges are your advocate during deliberations. If a pair of judges has seen you and they're impressed by what you tell them, that's the discussion that they're going to have with the other judges. And so, make sure you talk to them, because it's amazing how sometimes you'll go into a pit and it's like pulling teeth to get students to talk to you. You
Yep.
know, we promise we won't bite. You know, nobody, you know, they're there to support you. Give them the information that they need to be able to support you.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'll say that in my experience, judges are some of the most on the whole. I've had some other experiences occasionally, but by far and large, judges are the most warm and welcoming volunteers I've ever worked with or ever had come to my pit at an event for a team. But no, for real, because
we try, Francis, or I don't ask them back.
yes, right. but no, for real though, if you have the right mindset as a judge, you're there to hear what the students have to say and to be their advocate to reward those who excel for what they do, right? And so it's a very personal, sort of rewarding experience for the judges as well that I always find that's what really drew me into being a JA for FLL myself. So
great.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Right,
Sorry,
and
Katie.
with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to talk about chairman's and dean's lists and some of his other perspectives.
Hey, so I first want to share some of my general takeaways about being a judge, and then I'll focus in on what I'm looking for as a dean's list judge or a chairman's judge. First, and possibly most importantly, there's no set formula for winning awards or talking to the judges. Judges are people too. We have our own interests, our own expertise. Some judges are going to understand when you speak jargon, others are going to completely miss it. And that's why we have so many different judges. When we go back to the room, as Candie said, we're going to deliberate, we're going to compare notes and observations, trying to advocate on your behalf. And this means every judge matters. Every judge you speak to, even the ones later in the competition, just because you've already spoken to some judges, you still need to treat every judge who comes by with gracious professionalism and answering their questions, because we're all going to talk later. And as Candie said, teams should really recognize that as judges, we have our own job and our own schedule that we need to keep. So try to be available to the judges. It'd be awesome if every kid knew everything about the robot and everything the team did, but we fully understand that's not the case. But if you can have one or a few students who are able to be available to the judges to just do an introduction and then bring us to the students who might have the answers if they're at the practice field or if they're in the queue line, or even just scheduling a time to come back. It just might not be a convenient time for whatever reason. Just anything that shows that you care about our time goes a long way.
Yeah.
And then a general tip, whenever you're speaking to the judges, it's best to start wide and highlight the specific areas where you stand out. By casting a wide net and covering a wide berth, you're able to hit more topics in the limited time you have with the judges, and that provides more opportunities for the judges to ask questions, or they want like specific explanation, or things that they're looking for. The corollary to that is if the judge does ask you a question, listen to the question they're asking and answer that question. If their question sparks something else that you wanted to talk about, that's fine, but answer their question first. Especially later on in the competition, as Candie said, we will resend out judges for specific awards. They might be looking for something specific that your team might be up for, and they can't advocate for you for that award if they're looking for something about a mechanism, and all you want to do is talk to the judges about your outreach. If they're asking a specific question, make sure you're answering that question. But let me get into the specifics of Dean's List and Chairman's. Starting with Dean's List, a few things I just want to highlight. It should be apparent in the interview and the essay, how does the candidate represent FIRST, and do they demonstrate FIRST core values? I'm also looking to see if the candidate is a good example of a leader, and I need to be able to evaluate that. So just mentioning that the student is the leader of sub-team X, whatever that is good, but I need to know how they're leading that team in order to actually evaluate how well of a leader they are. And talking about that, you can easily roll into what are the students' specific and individual contributions to the team, and what I also like to hear what are the specific and individual contributions to not just the robot, but the outreach and the fundraising. Um, and to highlight, if I haven't done it enough, with Dean's List, we're looking at individual students. So it's really important to highlight what that student's individual and specific contributions and actions are in order to evaluate them. Um, for me, I also like hearing a bit of a narrative. I like to know where the student was, how they were first introduced into FIRST, what was their journey throughout FIRST, what were the ways that they've contributed to FIRST beyond just competing, and what have they done to spread awareness of FIRST to people who might not have heard it. Uh, I also really like to see if there's any mention of what the student plans to do in the future after graduation. How are they going to be involved with FIRST or continue with the FIRST mission? Um, Now, the Dean's List process, I think everyone knows, but the mentors will nominate up to 2 students and submit an essay on their behalf describing why they think they are a worthy candidate. Um, I personally encourage that the mentors share that essay with their students, or at the very least, let the students know what's in the essay. Because in the interview, it's great when the students are able to confirm the information that's in the essay, but I look at the interview as a chance for the student to share more about themselves. They can expand on something that's briefly mentioned in the essay, but showing more facets to who they are and the things they've done. We can reread the essay over and over again, if to make sure we're catching every detail that's in there. But there's only one shot at the interview,
Yeah.
so you got to make sure that you tell us everything you want us to know. Because after we say goodbye, unfortunately, as much as I would love to have multiple interviews, we only get the one interview per student. So switching from the very specific focus individual Dean's List, let's move on to chairman's. Chairman's is the most prestigious award. At FIRST, it honors the team that best represents a model for other teams to emulate and best embodies the mission of FIRST. We should all know that line. Let me highlight 3 things that I'm looking for specifically in the chairman's essay. First of all, each year's submission should be unique. Lots of the judges who do chairmans, we tend to do it year after year, or we'll take a break off, whatever. We can tell if you've only changed a few sentences or a word here and there in your essay.
Really?
You don't have to reinvent. Yeah.
Wow. You guys are that's awesome. Like I focus on my kids rewriting the essay every year, mostly as an experience for them. But I would have never thought, because I would never have thought that you guys were so consistent and you remembered everything so well.
Could you sneak something past us? Sure.
Yeah, but within reason, right? Yeah, that's great.
Within reason, and we get pretty good at reading essays. And for those who are not involved in writing courses, there's a tone to people's writing.
Yeah.
And if you can see the tone match in a bunch of sections and then change in other sections, you can tell it's a okay. Let's update this. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. It just be careful about doing just minimal updating to your essay. I'll go into it a little bit later, but doing that kind of shows that you're relying on past performance, which is not an ideal you want to be pushing forward. The other thing, kind of hitting on Candie's point earlier, is make sure you're answering the questions in the submission portion truthfully and honestly. The questions that are there are meant for the judges to help us evaluate and compare the teams on more apples to apples way. Turning the questions into your own marketing campaign, for instance, talking about your local volunteerism efforts, when the question is how many FR teams did you start? It shows that you're not interested in my job as a judge, and you're just interested on marketing yourself, and that doesn't go over very well.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think some teams know this, some teams don't. FIRST has specific definitions for a lot of keywords. They publish this list on the website. It's in the chairman section, and the document will list out. It has definitions and examples of the keywords. So I'm talking about words like start, mentor, assist, run, host, things that you do, with a team or with an event. They have very specific definitions that we as judges are trained on, and if you're using the definitions differently, it shows that you're not paying enough care to ensure you're communicating effectively with the judges, since we are trained to use them in that specific definition. So make sure that when you use them, you're matching those definitions, so that we were able to understand exactly what you're saying.
Can I ask a real quick question about that, Mike? So is this more like when someone say they use one of these terms in a way that doesn't match the definition? Are you able to sort of see that through the essay or through their interview, and sort of like set something off in your brain, like, oh, something's not right here, or does it end up being sort of like you find out later, or maybe you just never quite find out?
I mean, it's possible you don't find out, but often you can tell based on the description. So if they use the term start a team, and then later talk about how all they did was host a meet and greet and tell them about FIRST, and then once the team submitted
yeah, like
got set up. I can't think of the word for registration. Once the team's done registration and all that, and the build season starts, they go and then start helping that team. That's not what start means. Start means that you were embedded in getting them the grant for the money, or you somehow helped them fund greater than 50% of what it was to start that team.
Yep.
So if you say start in one section and then talk about how all you did was mentor or assist, it can become distracting, especially in an interview section, where it's like, well, wait, that's not what that word means. And now I'm thinking about you're using a term two different ways, as opposed to hearing what you're saying. And you certainly don't want to have a judge that's distracted.
Right.
So just be careful you're using those words consistently and in the way that FIRST is requesting that you do so.
And can I ask, so I don't know the answer to this, but are these terms being defined in a way just to make it easier for judges to work, or is it more just to sort of keep, I'll put this nicely, keep the embellishment that maybe teams are likely to do within a certain bounds?
Mike, I'll take this.
Okay, cool.
They wanted to make sure that everybody was on a level playing field.
Got it.
So that it's the apples to apples comparison. Like, you're not going to say that you started 500 FLL teams when it was your school district that started 500 FLL teams and you just advised them.
Right.
So they want to make sure, because there are teams that are just trying to build metric numbers, not really on the same level as a team who truly did go out and raise the money to start an FLL team.
Right.
So it's to level the playing field, and this was decided at the highest levels of FIRST. And they really did, I think it did a great job of publishing all of that. And so if teams are not aware of it, let's go back to read the guidelines.
Thank you, Candie. Sorry, Mike, go ahead. And I didn't mean to interrupt you too much, but.
Yeah, no worries. So those are my 3 points on the submission. For the presentation, it's just like the Dean's List. You only get one shot at it. It's really important that you make sure that the presenters are knowledgeable, confident, and enthusiastic. You want to make sure that we remember you after we've seen all the presentations and we're trying to deliberate and think later. Last 3 points I have are just apply universally across the chairmans. You want to concentrate your details on the last 12 to 18 months. Chairman's Award is about the team that best represents a model for other teams to emulate, not represented. Including a history is good. Do that. But make sure you're highlighting your current information. Kind of information we like to see is how the team is spreading FIRST. So are you starting new teams? Are you volunteering in the community? Are you introducing FIRST to people who've never heard of it? Excuse me. That sort of thing. How are you impacting FIRST? What are you doing to mentor teams or assist teams that exist? How are you supporting or volunteering at FIRST events? Are you holding any workshops for teams? That kind of thing. And what has the culture of FIRST, or how has the culture of FIRST like impacted your team? And how have you taken that and turned it around to spread that impact to others? The second point is it's really important to have both raw numbers and a good trajectory. It doesn't reflect well on a team to be doing nothing new and just resting on your laurels. Stagnation is not a behavior you look for in a role model. But it's also really important to reach a level of impact that is deserving of chairman's. And just point, uh, teams earn awards. You don't just, they're not gifted to you. Um, there's a threshold that you have to reach to be considered as part of deliberation for an award. This also means that you might be part of deliberation and not earn it. So just because you didn't win chairman's, you might have been part of that deliberation. But to be eligible in order to win chairman's, you have not only do you have to have that upward trajectory, you have to be at a level of influence such that you can be rightfully considered as a role model. It's part of the reason why rookie teams aren't even eligible to earn the award. And one last note, just to comment on hard luck stories, because I hear this a lot. Judges are specifically trained not to fall for a hard luck story. As I mentioned before, the chairman's is not gifted to teams. They have to earn it. But if you find yourself with a setback in the year, the previous year or whatever, by all means you can include it, but also include how you address the issue and how you've overcome it, or your plan for overcoming it if you haven't done so yet, and what's your current progress in doing so. Losing a sponsor or a key mentor is not a disqualification from chairman's, but it's also not a secret weapon to have some bad story. So this isn't reality TV. Judges aren't here for ratings. For chairman's, we're looking for the team that best represents a model for other teams to emulate. Sean, do you want to talk about Team Attributes Awards?
Actually, really quick, hey Mike, I want to just say I really appreciate what you've been talking about with respect to using the words create a role model for teams, right? I know that's part of the description, but I think that's something that kind of gets lost in like the description or the essay, that's what your real goal is, right? The Chairman's Award is trying to inspire people to be the greatest that they can be for all other teams to emulate, so that we're all as great as them.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
No, it's good. It's a good point to highlight. I fully support that.
All right. So over the years, I've interviewed a lot of enthusiastic teams, heard of a lot of great arguments from judges, and I've helped decide on many of the given out at the end of events. But I have a few big tips that I think can make a world of difference when making an impression on the judges at any event. So I want to start out with something I feel strongly about, and that's make a summary business plan. Here's something I've seen the last few years of judging. Judges will make, they'll interview teams in the pits, and almost none of the teams have a summary business plan to give the judges. Some teams that have 40+ page business plans, they don't have a summary that allows them to qualify for the updated entrepreneurship award. The summary business plan is only 3 pages, and it can take you less than a few hours to make. Everything that you need to put on it is listed on the FIRST website, and just by taking the time to put together 3 pages, you will be one of the few teams that even qualify for the award at the event. It's not a guarantee, but you will qualify.
Wow.
And there won't be a lot of competition out there right now. If this coming year is anything similar to this year and the past year, it'll also give your team a real awareness of their spending, their history, and their financial plan for the coming year. So don't let this single document stop your team from qualifying for the award next year.
This goes back to what Candie was saying. Got to read the award descriptions, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's another thing I'm going to highlight is just read the award descriptions. There's so many places where teams are really, really close and they're doing a great job, but they don't technically qualify because they're missing something. They're missing a chunk. So just reading the descriptions, the updated descriptions, because these awards can change every few years. I mean, I think the entrepreneurship changed maybe 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3 years ago. And that summary business plan is really big, or just teams aren't really trying for it. So I mean, all the awards count. All the awards can get you somewhere in first. Just because you're not winning, chairman's award doesn't mean entrepreneurship award isn't going to make a big impression on the judges. So next thing I want to talk about is first impressions. So first impressions they're a big deal. And the first time you meet the judges might not be when you're expecting them. They have a lot of teams to catch in a short amount of time. They may show up in your pit while you're getting ready to go to queue, or when you're in the middle of a huge repair, and this is always a chance to make a good impression. First off, if the judges arrive and they only see mentors working on the robot with the students standing way off to the side, it makes them think that you are not as invested as your mentors are, and that doesn't make a good impression. It's okay if it happens sometimes, but if the judges see it every time they walk by, it makes a difference. If judges are arguing over two teams for robot awards during deliberations, they'll choose the team whose students really show their hard work. Even if you're not sure how to fix something on your robot, you should be learning from your mentors. We want to see students standing there with them, watching what they're doing, and trying to do it themselves. This has come up almost every year, and it has added some serious weight to at least tie-breaking in the judge room. So another part of first impressions is your enthusiasm. So many of the awards in FRC are focused on enthusiasm. It's in a lot of the language that comes with, judging awards, and a lot of the language with FIRST. Judges always have to wear their blue judge polos, so they're easy to spot. If they show up to your pit and every team member is ignoring them, it doesn't show enthusiasm. Maybe the person who's practiced talking to the judges the most is working on the robot, or they're at the field, but that doesn't mean that the first person who sees them can't walk up and say hello and get their teammates' attention. Also, if it's not the best time, maybe the team is about to head to the field, or maybe they're off somewhere helping some other team. You can tell the judges that and ask, would you like to come with us to the field? Or our programmer is part of the drive team and they're needed at the field, but we can tell you about our business plan, or we can tell you about our STEM outreach. So, don't be afraid to be the first person who says hello. Acknowledging the judges goes a long way in showing that your whole team is ready to talk about their first experience.
Hey,
Even if, yep, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, hey, Sean. So this is something that I've heard some people suggest teams do as well, and this kind of goes to the enthusiasm you're talking about. Is it if you see judges that are like milling like through the pits or whatever, is it a good idea to be enthusiastic and sort of like, I don't want to say pull them into your pits, but like sort of try to lure them into your pits that way, even if they're not necessarily coming to specifically see you?
Yes and no. So a lot of what the judges might be doing is they might be having a hard time tracking down the teams that they are assigned to see. So part of it is you want to make sure they have their space to to find the teams that they need to talk to, because they have a limited amount of time and teams are all over the place. They're everywhere. So pulling them into your pit, maybe not. But as soon as you see them stop by their pit, showing your immediate attention, going up and saying hello. If they're walking by, just checking things out, be ready to talk to them. Feel free to to go up to them and say hello. But if they seem like they're headed somewhere else, don't necessarily try to pull them aside.
Okay, cool. Sorry, go ahead and continue, Sean. Thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Oh, unless they're not wearing their safety goggles. If they're not wearing their safety goggles, then you can feel free to call them out right away.
But no one would ever do that.
Of course not. So yeah, so making a good impression goes a long way. So whether it's just having something to say to the judges, even if you're the most well trained on programming, or you're not the most trained on what your business plan looks like, just having something to say to them if they come up to you and they stop at your pit. They stop at your pit, say hello for sure. And the last thing that I have to suggest is, one of the last things is do something creative. So each year, I see a lot of the same teams winning awards like Imagery. This award is looking for a fun visual theme that can be clearly seen on the team and the robot and even the cart. That part's important. We see a lot of teams coming in with really great t-shirts and graphics and creations that are all over their pit, that fit the year's challenge and incorporate something about the team. And this is awesome because it's really showing everybody's creativity. But we rarely see that same imagery reflected on the robot.
Ah,
You have to build a brand new robot every year. So why not take a little time to show the same creativity you add to your t-shirts, your hats, your pit, your banners, and add something to your robot and even your cart. It can be, decals, lights, 3D printed models, just something cool you hand painted on there. Some art, some stickers. That just shows a clear theme across your machine and your team at the events. Because judges are excited to find new teams to win awards like this one. We do see the same teams coming up there every year. Just because they maybe they have these decals that they throw across their robot that happen to match their pit and their costumes or their team T-shirts. So if you're looking for ideas, take the year's challenge into consideration. Find a way to blend the theme with your team's theme and show it off on both your robot and your team members and your cart if you can too. I mean, that's part of the award.
huh.
So it's really something that we see every year that comes into the award descriptions. So in the award descriptions, they want a theme across all of those things, not just on your t-shirts and your pit. Um, so I hope you find these things helpful. And for more information, just look up First Robotics Awards. You'll go right there. You can see the technical descriptions of each award listed out plainly. Check them again every year. They update. And your team can be really, really close. But if you don't read what the judges are technically looking for, you'll be making really good efforts that technically don't count. So take the time, read the award descriptions because they may change every few years. And we want you to win these awards because you are creative. You are enthusiastic. The judges just need to see it because they only get to see you for this tiny tiny part of piece of time.
Yeah.
So most of all, though, have fun.
And for those of you who are wondering, I literally just Googled what you just asked, First Robotics Awards, and the first page that came up was all the award descriptions. It's not hard. You just got to look for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think that brings us.
Right, handing it off to Chris.
Yeah, Chris, take it away. What are you going to be talking about?
All right. So my thought was I'd provide people watching kind of a day in the life of a machine judge.
Okay.
Gives people an idea of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and what we're trying to get from teams and provide back to teams as we're going through this. So I guess one of the first things is this starts out with we all meet up in the meeting and someone like Candie gives us a list of um, 12, 13 teams that we have 4 or 5 hours at the most to go through and review each team, their bot. There are two types of judges that are put out. Sometimes they're mixed together. It's the machine attribute and the team attribute. And it's right there in the manual, machine attribute awards, team attribute awards. Most judges could do both. Machine attributes a little harder. You have to have some technical knowledge. And some of the machine attribute judges aren't so good at the how do we say it, the softer, smushier side of judging. Engineers have a tendency to be black and white, so we make great machine attribute awards. That being said, so we have that time to find and judge 13 teams. This is in the same time of them trying to get set up for the day, them trying to queue, do their competitions, come back and fix everything that broke when they did their competitions, and then get back out there. So just finding them can sometimes be really one of our biggest challenges. There are two places that me as a machine attribute judge will find teams. Number one is, of course, the pit. And a machine attribute judge, it's kind of hard to do much with the team when there are 4 guys all in there ripping it apart trying to fix something that just broke. It happens. And, we'll do our best. We'll actually ask teams, hey, we're here to talk to you a little bit about the machine. Do you have someone who can talk to us? Or, is it a bad time? Should we come back later? I see you're busy. We can try catching you later. And, the later in the day that gets, the less um, we like to do that, because eventually we just run out of time to talk to judges. The other place I found is phenomenal places to talk to students who understand the robot, how it performs, and the mechanicals of it, is in the queue line. Students spend a ton of time in the queue with not much to do because they're sitting there waiting. So it's been a great place to talk to them. And sometimes you can't get all the people you want to talk to, but at least it can knock out a good chunk of the questions you like to ask. And if need be, you can go catch a few, catch them back in the pit, but you have a good chunk of your questions you wanted to talk to them about already taken care of.
Hey, so on that topic, Chris. So, if you're in the queue, obviously you're going to be with the drive team, the coach, the human player, operator, driver, and technician, right? So let's say, for example, that the person that your team is best or would want to or is best qualified to talk about the robot mechanically, or the 2 people or the 4 people or whoever may be, are the pit crew, the people who sit in the pit. What should a team do if they approach you at that point? Is that a good time to try and ask the judges to come to the pit later, or should we?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
And that's part of that discussion when you talk to them, like, hey, you mind if I ask you a few questions? And we understand. Sure, the lead software guy and the lead mechanical design may not be a driver, or one of those 3 or 4 students that are right there. Understand. But, some of the questions that lead us to, or we like to have when we talk to the full team, are actually better answered by the drivers, and you don't often get to talk to them in the pits. One of my favorite ones is, I'm not a high-end software. I know enough to do Arduino and stuff, but some of this high-end automation stuff is a little bit beyond, when they start talking about fancy coding stuff. I often like to say to the driver, hey, what does that guy do for you on the field? Does he have a magic button that does stuff for you, and what does it do, and how does it work? And then I'll go talk to the guy who wrote it. But all the awards are about things that work or things that help the thing. So sometimes you'll talk to students who are like, oh, we did all this great programming, and we have this camera that can find 17 things on the field, and we can calculate where everything is and make our path. Oh, great. And how does it work? Well, yeah, we haven't actually put it on the bot yet.
Yes.
Which is fine. I mean, that's what this is all about, like learning and whatnot. But as a judge, it's nothing I can get an award for. So it's off. I love asking the magic button thing, because drivers are often left out of the the machine stuff, because we just drive the thing, they build it.
Yep.
But how that works for the driver is a key aspect in designing anything. You can have the best thing in the world, but if the guys can't drive it, it's not an innovative control system. It's not a well-designed part if it doesn't actually execute on the field. Now, one of the other things that will happen is, even when we come in pairs of 2 to talk to teams, even just amongst those 2 people, I think 90% of the time I've gone to a pit, all of a sudden we have 2 separate conversations going on. One judge talking to a few students on one thing, and then the other talking about something else, whether it's the design process or the electrical system or the control system. We're there to try to get in and have as many discussions and learn as much as we can in a fairly short period of time. We'll then meet up after we talk to the team and check our notes and see if there's anything else we want to go back and ask them, or catch them a little bit later and ask them about. The other thing And these are tricks after doing this for 5 years I've just learned in the last year. I've often had to say, okay, that's really cool. I have no idea what any of that means. Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Okay.
I want you to explain this like you would to a person fresh on the team that doesn't understand what JavaScript or any of these other code things you're doing. It's very interesting to see, like when you make them step back and give you the broad view, it really allows the team as a whole to come together and explain things without having to go down deep down the code monkey part or any other aspects of the team. Um, so one of the things that I found over the years, teams that do it always end up being more memorable. Having a little one-page handout of a picture of your robot and some of the key attributes that you'd like to have highlighted is huge for the judges. It's not a requirement or anything like that, but at the end of 2 days of judging, we're sitting in a room talking about 40 bots, and we all have our notes. I mean, I carry around my little, blue book with pages upon pages of notes, but the picture with the things that it does as a little handout next to it is always helpful. And it could be something as similar as team name picture of bot with an arrow saying, hey, this is our, our ball shooter thingy, and this is our, whatever aspects they have, or, an actual, flyer for both the machine and the team. Most of the information's already put together if you're doing any of the other submissions, for FIRST. So it shouldn't take a lot. And any of the teams that have given me one, I've asked them, like, how long did it take you to put this together? And they're like, well, it's kind of copy and paste. But, it's always helpful. It's not a requirement, of course. But, people often ask, like, what can I do to help the judges give us an award? Well, help us by remembering who you are. And, the age-old adage, RTFM, read the free manual.
Yes.
Okay. Any of these awards, like everyone reads one, innovation in control is a great example. Oh, okay, I want to do this, control thing or whatever it is. There's 2 key attributes of that one. A team spokesman must be able to identify and describe controls, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so first of all, we don't have to find it. You're supposed to be able to explain it to us and walk us through it. And then the innovation is practical and addresses the game's challenge, not just, cute. And it has to be reliable under the stress of competition. So no matter how good it is and how well you talk to it, it has to actually be functional and useful in the game, and it has to work. That last part is actually a lot harder than you would think.
Well,
we always see great guys in the pits explaining, oh, and it does this and it does this, and we go talk to our field, match observers. They're like, it was parked most of the match, and they're doing a lot of defense.
Yep.
So that, think about it all the way around.
As a member of Team 190, I am very aware of the should work great but doesn't work right now syndrome.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy talking to students that are working on things. I mean, that's part of what this is all about. We're working on something. It doesn't work yet. We're hoping for, and that's a question I always ask.
Yep.
At, middle or end of the process is, hey, what do you guys want to do for next match, for next event that didn't work well or whatever it is? Because they're always thinking that way.
Yeah.
We're not going to fix it today, but during this next week or 2-week period, here's the list of things we want to do. The design process is a huge thing for me. I used to be a design build engineer. What is their design process? There's no wrong answer to that. Oh, well, we all write it on napkins and then we staple our napkins together and we use that. Great. You have one. Is it a whiteboard? Is it we actually CAD everything and put out drawings and whatnot? What is your process? can you describe it? Can you show me anything? Manufacturing. Are you doing the manufacturing, in team? Do you have sponsors that are supporting you? How is your sponsors communicating your manufacturing limits? Well, we can only do bends like this, or we can only do holes this big or this size, whatever it is. How do you communicate back and forth through your design? We sent you this design, it needs X more data. How is that communication documented? Again, is it done on napkins? Nobody said napkins weren't good, but how do you work with your manufacturing side of the house, with your design side of the house, and keep that working? And then one of my most favorite aspects is when I'm talking to different members, like, hey, what part are you most proud of? It may be the person who helped with getting the wiring done. Be like, oh, well, we spent a lot of time, doing this wire, and I'm really proud with how it came out. Might have nothing to do with gameplay, but every student has time and effort invested in the machine, and I like to hear what the individuals did. Um, and what's been working, what doesn't work. We came in here with this great climber, and it doesn't climb. We think we know why, but it doesn't. Let's have that discussion, because that's all about the engineering process.
Yeah.
So it's having all those conversations and then matching that information up with the different awards. And then we go up and we start writing numbers down. And then, we had our 13. I don't think I've ever done only 13 during that first period, because you're always, oh, well, nobody's around. Oh, let's go look at that one. Let's go talk to them. Because eventually you're going to talk to at least 2/3, if not more, of all the teams. So there's never a bad idea to go talk to a few more.
Oh.
So I mean, that's pretty much a day in the life of a machine judge, at least for the first day and a half.
Yeah. Hey, so Chris, I know you were talking a lot about the design process, and that's always an aspect I stress to my students, that they should be talking to the judges about how we work as a team and all that, or how we go through the process as a team. And this is, we may touch on this during the questions a little bit too, but there's no like award specifically about just the process, right? So where does that sort of fit into deciding what awards teams are eligible for or best fit for?
Well, so the design process is kind of a key attribute in, I think it's quality, industrial design, even innovation and control aspects, or even, excellence in engineering. Not that any one of them is specifically the design,
Right.
but that process is about tracing the concept and design of an aspect of the machine. And conception and design is the design process. Um, and a lot of those awards talk about, where did the design come from? Where did that aspect of it come from? And I've never, how to say this politely, I've never seen a truly successful team, like a good 1 year and the next year and the next year successful team, that doesn't have a robust design process.
Yeah. I mean, you could say the same thing about any company or any organization, really, right? You've got to have a process to make yourself consistent and accountable and improve year over year.
Oh, I didn't come up with this on my own. This is from, years of working in the submarine community. Nothing isn't done unless it was written 10 times.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, thank you for that, Chris. So, with that, Candie, do we have any other closing words, or do we want to move on to taking questions from the chat? Oh, go ahead.
A couple of thoughts.
Yeah.
Number one, and I think it's easier to see this in districts than it is when you're outside of district. Every award is important. Sean alluded to that. I think years ago there was a culture or a feeling that the machine awards were worth more. They're not, and especially in a district model. every award is worth the same amount of points with the exception of chairman's.
Yeah.
And EI has a different configuration attached, and so does Rookie All-Star, but those are the exceptions. Every award is worth the same number of points to advance in the district model. And, when FRC says spread the wealth, it's because they view all those awards as the same thing. There is nothing more heartbreaking and frustrating for judges, or even for those of us who also mentor teams, to have people come back and say, "Oh, we only won the Imagery Award." That nothing will, anger me more to hear something like that.
Yeah.
Then, fine. If you don't want it, we'll give it to somebody who does.
Excellent.
It matters, and and that also lends itself to behavior. Sean talked about making a first impression, and first impressions are important. Lasting impressions are also important. Teams need to realize that poor behavior throughout the course of an event gets back to the judge room. Cuers, lead volunteers, safety people, robot inspectors, if they have a problem with a team, they tell us. That is a direct contributor to gracious professionalism,
Uh-huh.
and it matters. And you don't want to you may have built the best blasted robot that FRC Robotics has ever seen. And if every member on your team were jerks to the cuers, to the inspectors, to judges walking in the pit or whatever, I don't care how great your robot is, you failed GP.
Right.
And that matters. Don't be that team. Don't be the team that we have to. Unfortunately, I've had to do it way too many times, to go pull lead mentors aside and say, "Do you understand that your students are being disrespectful? And it's affecting how people view your team." I don't want to have those conversations. It's one of the hardest parts of my job.
Yeah.
So, behave with GP all the time. One of the things too that teams need to be aware, and I don't think a lot of teams saw it because we cut the season so short. There are no gracious professionalism feedback forms anymore.
Oh, you're right.
They are not. We have to get all that information based on what we see and what volunteers tell us and what other teams tell us. Because unfortunately, the GP forms, teams made a joke of them.
Oh.
I seriously had a form that came back and said, "I want to nominate team ABC because they lent me a pencil to fill out this form."
Yikes.
Yeah. It's so, GP is important. I mean, everybody talks, it was important to Woody, it's important to all of us. And, that's another message to teams. Treat it like it's important. Treat it like it was meant to be,
Yeah.
because it will affect how you're viewed. And, if it comes down to a tiebreaker between two incredible teams up for the same award, and somebody was not behaving well and somebody was going out of their way to help somebody else, three guesses who the judges are going to pick.
Right.
It matters.
Yeah. And so I'm so happy you said that, because so as a Lego League judge advisor, we also, obviously all FRC programs have that same concept behind it, right? And I know that in Lego League they give us sort of specific guidance and guidelines as to what kind of behaviors should be taken as something that would be potentially like tiebreaker, or like you shouldn't pay attention to it, or it's something that could cause someone to be disqualified even. I'm not asking you to necessarily divulge anything, but does FRC have guidelines for judge advisors like that as well?
Not to the extent that FLL has it.
Okay.
But we are told we do look at gracious professionalism.
Yeah.
It is an award, so all those things, come into it. But when the safety manager or the safety advisor goes up to a team and has to warn them 5 times that they have too many people in the pit, or better yet, somebody's standing on top of a table. Um, you know, things that are blatantly obvious, but yet you have to be told again and again and again. It means you don't care.
Yeah.
And it goes into that whole bigger picture of what we have to look at. I mean, there's nothing that basically says, oh yeah, well, if you do X, Y, or Z, you're going to be disqualified. We don't have that. It's not like, with FLL,
Right.
if a kid says a parent's the one who programmed the robot, that's
Yep.
another
Yeah.
story. But we don't have that kind of thing. But it goes for impressions, and not that we would use it to make the decision, but if it came down to a tiebreaker, between two awards,
Right.
it's going to play in.
And so, and this is something that I know that I've heard a lot of people say, or say that they've heard a judge say, or something like this. And I truthfully want to answer for me, and I think people would appreciate hearing it. So, like, is it true that if you exhibit ungracious behavior like this, you can sort of be eliminated from contention for awards? And if that's the case, is there any way, like in Lego League, when that happens, it's generally very, very clean cut, so you have the opportunity to alert the coach as to why or how that happened. How does FRC handle a situation like this?
It's not formal.
Right.
It's basically up to the judge advisor. I have never taken the team out of consideration for an award, unless, now granted, I haven't taken a team out of consideration for the award, but if stuff starts hitting, the comments are coming in from the cuers and from the safety guys and stuff, I will go down and have a discussion with the mentor.
Okay.
Point blank, call you out on it. You can't do this.
Well, yeah, and it's important to try to alert people to what's happening and to correct behaviors that are, something that FIRST is trying to modify in the whole culture, right? That's the whole purpose of the
Right.
program. So.
Right. And different teams handle it differently. I've had teams where where I've gone to the mentor and said, are you aware that your students are doing this? And it has to stop. And, half an hour later, I have a bunch of very contrite students come to find me and say, we would like to apologize because we never meant to behave that way.
Yeah.
And then I have teams that are, hey, guys, you really can't. When the safety manager says you can't stand on the table, you can't stand on the table, period.
Yeah.
And they don't care. And, nothing's going to knock you off the board for everything. But like I said, if you have, and let's face it, with a team with an event with 40 teams, there is never one of those posters on the wall that only has one number on it.
Yeah. That's true.
It has multiple numbers, and there becomes a discussion.
Yep.
The only time that probably, yeah, okay, fine, if you're standing on the table and you don't care, we're taking you off of the safety award.
Yes.
But so it's a little different than FLL because there are no disqualifications
Okay.
like that. But it becomes your behavior becomes part of deliberation.
Great. So actually, now you mention it, I know that things are, like you've mentioned earlier, the safety award is a little different than a lot of the other awards. Can you kind of briefly just talk to us how that ends up happening? Like, I know there are safety advisors. There used to be safety judges.
Well, this year was different.
Okay.
And we only had 2 weeks of it this year. And it was a little bumpy. In the past, UL has provided a safety advisor to each event. There's too many events and not enough UL people. So now New England this year only had 2 UL advisors actually go to events. So they created the role of a safety manager, and it's considered a key position.
Uh-huh.
The volunteer coordinators need to staff it, and that person works with the judges to determine who gets the safety award. The judges have never been responsible for the safety award up
Okay.
until now. So we have, a bunch of things like some other judge advisors have come up with, like, checklists of, hey, does the team have this? Does the team have that? Do they know do they have a fire extinguisher? Do they know where it is? All those kinds of things. You know, the judges are now looking at, and the safety manager is looking at it from a perspective of, okay, are they doing things safely in the pit? And so so they come into the judge room when the judges are talking about the safety award, and that's how we determine it now.
Okay, great. Cool. All right, so I think now that my last question's out of the way, this is my opportunity here. But we're gonna start taking some of the questions from the folks in the Twitch
Sure.
chat. We've got a whole bunch of them in here. So if you're watching it live and you've got a question, type !Q and your question in chat. We'll pull it in and we'll ask these guys live on the air. Guys, I say guys. I shouldn't say guys. All these people live on the air. First up, our first question here. This comes from user. Their name is Iscarion124. Their question is for the Chairman's Award. Do judges spend time learning about teams outside of submitted materials and presentations? For example, social media, team website, etc. Mike, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It is not a hard requirement that a judge do so, though I can tell you that I myself and most judges will take the effort because we care. We do try to limit the evaluations to what is presented in the formal submissions and formal interview, but we genuinely care. So if your team talks about how you have a YouTube channel where you offer training videos and such, I'm gonna go check out that YouTube channel to, one, make sure it exists, and to see what you're doing. But yeah, formally we keep our evaluations based off of what you present, such that we're not supposed to be, searching out uh, things to for a team, but we will do so as well, just because we genuinely are interested in this.
Oh, cool. All right, another question. This one's going to probably go back to Mike, but if anybody else has any input on any of these, feel free to jump in as well. This one's coming in about the chairman's again. They're asking, do judges use the chairman's video as part of determining the winner of the award?
So the chairman's video is
Candie.
essentially your ticket to be eligible for the award.
I see.
We judge it, like I said, we judge it on the presentation and the submission. Your video is checked, make sure that's first approved. But we do not use the content of the video as part of our evaluation.
Okay, cool.
And actually, I'll hop in there. There are teams that have, rather than actually do a presentation, they will play their video. So you can, if you want to use your video as your presentation, you can, but you don't get both.
I see.
If it fits within the time limit.
If it fits within the time limit,
Yeah.
correct.
Yes. We have a 25-minute video to show you. Uh-oh.
No.
Director's cut. Yeah. Okay, that's good to know, because I'm glad this person asked this, because quite honestly, my kids ask it every year, and I tell them, like, no, the video just has to be good so that when we win, we can show it to people. It doesn't have to be a full director like Hollywood production here. So another question coming in. This is from user Off and Back On is their name, and they're asking. These are all usernames on the internet here. What's the most common misconception or false rumor you've heard about judging? And I'll open this up to anybody who wants to answer. I know this is a little bit of a brain buster, but
potentially that people think that the judges don't have a set schedule, and we just sit and can watch matches and talk to teams at our leisure, and then we just give out awards. Whereas what we are doing is diligently spending our time to see who earns the awards.
Okay, cool. That's fair. Anybody else? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, one other one, and it didn't come up when Candie was talking earlier, is yeah, we're not allowed to have favorites.
Right.
Um, it's one of the things that's actually sometimes can be a problem is when we walk into the room, we have to put up any teams that any judge may have affiliation with. And then, luckily, this is Candie's job often more than not, is set up her judges so that none of those judges come anywhere near any of those teams. Um, which some events is harder than others, depending on how your mix of judges with some team affiliation. Um, but I'm not sure many people truly understand how much effort it is to steer around that, and how much first takes that into consideration with their judges and the judging process.
Cool. Yeah, that's an important thing. I mean, and also all FRC volunteers are asked to disclose their affiliations, even if you're a queuer. For a queuer camp is not going to not queue a team if they have affiliation with them, but it is one of those things that first takes very, very importantly. Is very, very thinks is very, very important, I should say. Okay, cool. We're going to move on to a couple more questions here. This one's coming in. They're asking, during pit interviews, do you think it's better for one student to do all the talking or to have a few students? Does it have no impact at all?
I'll give you my impression on that. Is while I love talking to a student that knows everything, nobody likes to talk to only one person on the team. Some of the best interviews have been the current person who does something and the person they're training, and other people who also have knowledge in areas that area or areas surrounding it. So talking to 3 or 4 students at a time is always more educational than just one person who hogs the conversation. And sometimes as a judge, you're trying to say, okay, but what do you have to say? Try to get from more than just a person. Um, I don't think there's a single award that says one person was able to. It's always, the team is able to explain or the team can do this. So it's important that the team talks to judges, not just one person.
But you can have a spokesman, kind of is the cat herder,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, well, this person is the best, versed in our business plan. This person can talk to you about our outreach. This person, was the lead mechanical person. So it's kind of, if you have somebody who knows who the judges should be asking specific questions to, that's a great thing. Or if the person who knows about the business plan is part of the scouting crew and they're up in the pit, hey, we'll go get that person for you.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
I love being handled as a judge when you go in to ask them stuff and, their spokesperson comes out and say, so what would you like to talk about? All right, well, I have that person lined up. Who would you like to talk to after them so I can go get them ready too?
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, I've had that happen a few times and I've never felt more handled in my lifetime. And it was awesome because I was able to ask all the right people, all the right questions, and it just went seamlessly. And again, it doesn't take much to do. It's just thinking of it and actually, executing it the right way.
Yeah, and sort of a corollary question that came in earlier. This comes in from user. Their name is Crispy Kiwi, and they're asking: does having a rookie, I assume a rookie member of a team, speak to you alongside an older member, or having that next in line protege type person you were talking about? Does that leave you with a better impression generally, or are you looking to just hear from sort of the people that know exactly what they need to talk about always?
Oh, I'm always love to see how teams are doing succession planning and teaching the new members how to do stuff. And in the machine side, it doesn't necessarily fall into, oh, well, they did that and that's this attribute for machine, but it's huge part of the team attribute things.
Yeah, I was going to say,
So
Sean, do you want to speak on that a little bit, Sean, or do you have anything to say on that issue?
Oh no, I love it. I think it makes a fantastic first impression. I like to see people almost talking over each other and then stopping to let somebody else say something. especially younger teams. I want to see, I want to see everybody out there. I love that. The biggest impressions we had at the one place I judged this year was a team where there were 3 or 4 team members on a tiny team, all really bouncing with excitement to say something, but pausing to let other people finish, and and that was great. And another team that made a huge impression, even for the smaller things, like even things like not that this is small, but safety. They had their senior safety captain, and they had all the information they needed, and then they had their junior safety captain who brand new to the team, and they were both taking turns, and the senior safety captain kept saying, well, maybe you can answer this question, and that was great. That made a huge impression, and really impressed us in the judge room.
Wow. And as a mentor to people who may be watching this, it doesn't, doing that kind of stuff, or having your students do that kind of stuff, doesn't have to. It sounds, the way you can sort of say that, it sounds very fake, right? It sounds very like, hello everyone, let me tell you about this. What do you have to say, right? But like, if you nurture that culture within your team, it's very easy to get your students, or for other students to do that with each other. It doesn't have to be sort of a manufactured or a planned thing. It's great when the kids can do it on their own. So,
Well, the other thing too, and like you look at the reason why there's 4 of us on this little call instead of 1. When one person forgets something, your teammate is there to help remind you.
that's true.
You're nervous. There's a lot of excitement going on, and you have this whole list of things you want to tell the judges,
Yep.
and you forget, because it happens. And if you have a teammate, oh yeah, weren't you going to tell them about, So it's important. It's a team aspect. It's not an individual aspect.
Wow, awesome. All right,
Yeah,
so
and that team
go ahead.
culture comes through, across the board, regardless of what award it is. Having a team with a really good culture, whether it be official process or cohesiveness in doing things, you'd be surprised at how well that comes through when the judges are there talking to people.
Wow. So we're getting a lot of questions coming in very lately. So we're going to try to put a few more up here. So this one's coming in from Eric Klein. Eric, I believe if it's the right Eric Klein, he presented yesterday. So check that out on YouTube. They're asking, does a team that chooses to make their branding consistent from year to year, rather than adapting it to the year's theme, lower their chances of winning the Imagery Award? Sean, do you want to touch on that? Because you kind of brought that up when you're part of your presentation a little bit.
So I'll say, so far, no. So far, it doesn't lower their chances. I do see teams getting it every year, but I would like to see some more change. I'd like to see more people, even if it's a team that's been doing it every year. Maybe they can change up what they're doing to incorporate this year's challenge. So you have a team maybe who, like, very brightly showing off their team colors, and that's every year, and they're they're right there on the field, they're through the pits, and they're showing off this theme with their robot, with their with their costumes, and their costumes are the same every year. That's great. Like, they're probably going to win the award again this year, just because not a lot of other teams are trying to stand out for the Imagery Award as it's written. I do want to see more teams showing off, and
Yeah.
in which case those older teams, they might have to just be creative, change something up this year. So maybe don't use the same costumes as last year, or stick something like a vinyl sticker on the costumes. Maybe this year had kind of a Star Wars theme. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody take any Star Wars logos or anything of that nature and putting it on their stuff, but they could make things more space themed, or they could add an element to it that goes with that shows that they had some new added creativity this year that wasn't there last year, and they can put that on their robot, they can put it on their car, and they can put it on their costume.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I think immediately to, not, you don't have to answer. I think immediately to, like, teams 172 and 4048 up in New England here. They both have a consistent sort of theme, but they adjust it every year for for the game theme to add a new spice, whether it's a rocket ship or a
Right.
gondola or whatever.
Actually, Francis, 172 did that last year.
Yeah.
You know, again, they had everything pink like they always do, and it was ever very present. And then they also had spacesuits to go with the pink.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was just that one other little piece that they added. And, but, then again, part of imagery, you have to, know the history of the imaging and all those kind of things. So it's certainly not going to knock you out, but, it also can, I would just warn about it getting stale.
Right. Okay. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
One thing I'll add, specifically for imagery, what's more likely to knock you down in the list is not including your cart. The teams that end up bubbling up the top, a lot of teams have the team colors, the mascots, they hit the pit, they hit, how everyone's dressed, and then some teams continue that into the robot and the cart, while a lot of teams stop at just people, pit, and costumes. So making sure you're hitting all the components of imagery, which includes the robot and the cart, that is more likely to drop you down if you skip those versus if you were to include a game theme.
Wow. I know that you mentioned that too, Sean. And now that both of you said that, I'm going to probably tell my kids to decorate the cart next year. All right.
And,
go ahead.
It's really very true. It spells it right out.
Huh. All right. Cool. All right. So I'm going to got another question here. This is from user C 240,000 or 240000. They're asking, are some things that are presented in the chairman's room or written in the essay used to judge for engineering inspiration, or is only what's said in the pits considered? I think this is a question. A lot of people have the impression, whether it's true or not, that EI is like second place chairman's award, right? Because it is sort of the next highest up award. But Candie, why don't you start talking about it a little bit?
It is not a second place chairman's award.
Yeah.
Period. It's not. Some chairman's judges may come into the room and suggest, like the same way we have a poster on the wall with every other award, they may have a team that they interviewed that maybe they might be considered, but there's a set of judges that go out and talk to the teams about engineering inspiration.
Oh.
And that's done in the pit. So it's not like somebody's going to come out and say, oh, well, these are the teams that are up for EI. It is not a second place chairman's, and they are going to be interviewed and asked questions specific to EI. And that's going to happen in the pit.
And not the chairman's judges.
Right.
Correct.
Each event is different, but as a general rule, the chairman's judges are busy doing the chairman's interviews and aren't part of the going into the pit process for EI. So the EI judges who are focused on that have the biggest sway. Now, we all, depending on how it's laid out, we tend to be in the same judges room and judges can offer input. But the chairman's judges are focused on chairman's. It's a lot of work to do chairman's judging. We don't have a abundance of free time to offer to the other stuff.
Right. The EI judges are part of the team. For me, they're part of the team attribute teams.
Okay. So I guess that question is, so say that I have judges come over. Normally what I've found is I've got like two sets of judges that come to the pit. We've got like our robot or machine judges, and then we have team attribute judges. Is there also like the third set for EI the way you do it, or is it generally
they're part
okay.
They're part of the team attribute set.
Oh wow, okay. Very cool. So I guess not to derail this too far, but Sean, it sounds like there's a lot of stuff that team attribute judges have to cover with like business plans and imagery, spirit, EI. Not to say that there's a lot with the robot, but at least the robot has a robot you can just look at. Can you give a little impression about what it's like to be one of these judges? Like, how do you balance all of these different things going on that you're trying to judge?
Yeah, it's a lot. They even typically add safety this year to to team attributes judges because if you don't have those folks judging for you, then it's mostly something we've been giving to the team attributes judges. So one thing we ended up doing this year or Candie ended up doing, and I was planning to for my event before it was canceled, was having more teams of team attribute judges going out there looking at fewer teams to begin with, and that was one way to make it a little bit more helpful. It gives those judge pairs uh, fewer teams to go look at, and have more judge pairs set aside for team attributes rather than necessarily machine attributes, because there's a lot of questions they have to ask. They have bullets they have to focus on, as well as their own curiosities and what comes up when the kids have things to say. So really, there's been kind of a shift from last year to this year, with a big focus on team attribute judges. So yeah, part of it comes with like a bullet list, and then part of it comes with did the teams bring up their something about their imagery, or did they bring up something about their team spirit, or did they bring up something about their their STEM outreach, because they are their own advocates.
Yeah.
So they could have a really great STEM outreach program. They could have started 2 new teams this year, but if the teams didn't offer that up to the judges, and if everyone on the team doesn't know, oh yeah, we did start 2 teams this year, then there's a chance that the judges aren't going to hear that. So even if a team member wasn't involved in the STEM outreach, it's really important for some of those team members to have kind of a baseline knowledge of, like, what did our teams do for outreach this year? Like, what is our team doing to incorporate our team's history into its image this year? Or how do we come to these team colors or this logo? Or what's our plan? How
Right.
did we raise our money? What are we going towards? Like, just having a baseline for that kind of also rolls into making a good first impression. Even if you don't know the most about it, be willing to say something about your team that the judges can take back to the judge room.
Wow. Cool. All
Yeah.
right. All right. So we got more questions coming in. Here's another one. This is from Off and Back On again. They're asking, this thing I'm really interested too. If teams want feedback on their judging short of the chairman's feedback form, is there any way they can seek that out?
There is no formal mechanism for feedback from
Okay.
the judging crew. Given you've got 40 teams, the regionals are in the 60s, right?
Right.
There just isn't enough time for us to do feedback for all those things.
Okay. And I assume that if say, for example, a team came to you specifically, obviously you would be like welcoming and try to answer the best they can, but you can't offer necessarily any sort of comprehensive or even like super targeted response to anything.
No, I
Okay.
mean, if there's a specific problem with a very specific focused question, we can try to answer that. But otherwise, it's what goes on in the judge room stays in the judge room.
Right.
We were saying it before it ever did it in Vegas.
All right. So another question here. This is from user named Dare, and they're asking, do you take into consideration past experiences with teams, or do you have to put that aside for each individual year? So I guess
you've got to put it aside.
Okay.
Right. So if you behaved really poorly last year, nobody's going to hold it against you. You can, and we're even within the same season. A lot of judges will see teams from one event to another event.
Oh.
What happened last time doesn't count this time. You always start. Everybody goes in with a clean slate.
And the other part of that is there'll be teams that, for whatever reason, with one set of judges at a previous event, told them all this wonderful stuff, but at the next event, for whatever reason, doesn't come up. You can't bring that up in the room. It's like, well, but last week I heard all this stuff. Well, that doesn't help.
That was last week, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Right. Each event is its own little microcosm.
Okay, and that also goes for everything else, like Chairman's Award too, right? Like, say for example, because the Chairman's Award, you've got the same essay at multiple events in a district, and you're going to have an interview that's similar. So if one team is presenting, should they present the same presentation again, or should they maybe, if they have an idea that they may have seen those judges before, should they try to branch out and cover new topics, knowing that they know the other stuff?
No.
Okay.
You cannot assume that you're going to see the same judges.
Right.
So now, if you think that if you brought a chairman's feedback form with and asked the chairman's judges for that feedback, because that's the only way they can give you that feedback.
Yep.
If you take that feedback and you modify your presentation to adapt to that feedback, great. But don't assume that you're going to see the same judges and try to give them different information, because all that anybody is allowed to look at is what happens in that event.
Okay.
No previous stuff, no past year stuff, no off-season stuff. It's whatever happens from load-in Friday night until the end of Sunday.
Present what you want us to know. That's what we're going to judge you on.
Okay. We're going to do just one or two more questions, and then we're going to break. But this has been so much fun. I kind of don't want to end it, but we got a couple more to go. So up next, this question asking, say during the course of an event, my team is able to make a non-working aspect of the robot and make it work, but only after talking to the judges. How can you catch their attention after that point? Say, for example, like something starts working, after the first match on Sunday, after the judges have come by already.
So we have a few things that would help with that. One of them are our match observers, especially as you're getting towards the latter half of the competition, are going to be pretty pleasantly surprised to see something new start to happen. So that's clearly one of the things that will flag it. But don't be afraid to grab one of the judges you talked to previously and say, hey, we talked about this, but we finally got it. Would you want to come take a look? Again, at that part of the competition, we're happy to see something new that didn't work that now works.
Yep.
Depending on when it is, it could be too late for the judging, because we try to get a lot of the judging wrapped up late Sunday morning. But we're always willing to see new things. And if there's, hey, maybe it's not time, but maybe it is, but we're always willing to look.
Cool. All right, this will be our final question for the afternoon here. This is coming in from RSISK 101. They're asking, what was the best swag that you ever received from a team? The best tchotchkes or like gifts or whatever you've ever received as a judge.
Sean, do your favorite.
Okay, definitely. Marshmallow Catapults. Something that they give out at events. When they're out showing off their robot in the town, people they give out a marshmallow catapult that you can construct yourself out of popsicle sticks and a spoon and little tiny marshmallows. I think it has to do with the Marshmallow Festival in Somerville, but it's fun, and it's a project someone can build. It's STEM related, and it's something they can take home and think, I built this. Maybe I'll like to build more things.
So it's something cool that you got that made it memorable for you, but also link back to what they actually do from an outreach perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And it shows it shows exactly what they're doing, and you can see it in your value.
Nice.
I think my favorite was probably the first year I judged at Worlds in St. Louis. There was a rookie team there from Turkey who gave all the judges an all-seeing eye for protection from bad spirits.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Hope it worked out.
It did. It was a good thing.
Good.
I myself am not a huge swag fan, but several years ago, back before the price of hand sanitizer, skyrocketed, there was a team that gave all of the judges personal hand sanitizers on a loops that you could put on your belt. And they're like, listen, we know you shake a lot of hands, you give a lot of high fives, so we just want to, give you something to take care of that. And I was like, that is very thoughtful.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, everybody, thank you so much for spending the time here with me and all the viewers at home watching and talking about judging for the First Box competition. I know I learned a ton today. And so Candie, Chris, Mike, and Sean, I can't thank you enough for joining us here this afternoon and giving up your time to do this for us.
Thanks
You're
for
most
hosting.
welcome.
Anytime. This is
Yeah.
great.
All right. So for everybody who's watching now, we're going to take a quick intermission, but we'll be back at 4 o'clock Eastern Time with our next presentation about fundraising and grant writing by our presenter, Nikki Stout. She'll be up in just a few minutes. But one last thank you to all of you guys here and all of you folks watching, and we'll see everybody in just a few minutes. Take care for now.
Take care.